I've been doing my 1 hour of outdoor exercise at night because I find it the most relaxing. My neighborhood is very quiet and I'm lucky to live in a nice area which I've always considered super safe. I used to walk at night even before the lockdown because I live right next to a canal, so there are lots of nice paths that are super pretty at night when everything is all lit up by the moon. Anyway, I was walking last night and decided to go to the shop first because I was hungry, and then detour back to my usual route along the canal. When I was walking, I heard two guys speaking super loudly in German. I live in England, so it was a bit unusual, but not anything that I thought twice about. They looked around 30, pretty tall, and they had caps on, which I remember because they had matching designs, which I thought was funny. They started getting really close, and when I glanced back to look at them, they started jeering, so I knew they were looking at me, which kind of freaked me out. So I sped walked towards the shop, but had to stop at the road. I wasn't planning on getting hit by a car. They caught up with me, but they didn't stop for the lights to change. They just walked across and went into the store that I was headed for. So I shrugged off my hunger and decided to just go to the canal for my walk. I stopped thinking about the men soon after, chalking it up to me being a generally anxious person. I don't particularly like walking past strangers at night, and I'm self-conscious enough as it is without them talking to or about me. Anyway, I complete my walk and I'm headed back home. For the story to make sense, I need to describe where I was stood. On my right, there is the water itself. I am stood on the path, and to my left, there's a big drop that goes straight into the main road. Next to that road, there's a row of houses, and there's a railway bridge in front of me. I have my earphones in and my music is pretty loud, but I think I hear someone shouting, so I take one earphone out, and I listen. But it's pretty silent apart from passing cars on the road below me. That's when I see two men heading towards the bridge, and I immediately recognize them as the two guys who had jeered at me before from their cabs. I stop walking as my anxiety floods back, and consider phoning somebody because I irrationally think if I'm on my phone when they walk past me, that they won't bother me. But despite the fact that I've been stood frozen for ages, nobody comes out from under the bridge. I wait, staring at the bridge for a while in complete confusion, because there's no way they could have just vanished. I can see through to the other side of the bridge, so I knew they didn't turn around and walk away or anything, but they certainly hadn't walked through because no one had passed me. After a few minutes, I start to think that I'd hallucinated them or something. I have no history of hallucinations, but I couldn't explain it any other way. So I started slowly walking towards the mouth of the bridge, and just as I'm about to step in, I see it. The shadow of one of the men cast across the wall. My blood literally ran cold as I realized what was going on. They were waiting for me on the other side of the bridge, but they must have been hidden behind the abutment so I wouldn't see them. My mind went to a million different places, panicking about what they would do if I walked under that bridge. I was convinced they would just follow me. If I stayed where I was and phoned for help, I was certain they would come out to see what was going on, and I would be trapped. I did the only thing that I could think to do. I quietly ran to the fence that separated the canal path from the drop to the main road, and I climbed it. It was only about up to my thigh. And on the other side, there is a small space before the wall and drop itself. I waited for a couple of moments as the cars passed, but thankfully, I live in a quiet area, so the road was soon empty. I managed to navigate myself so I could lower myself off the drop without A, making much noise, or B, hurting myself too much. And the moment my feet hit the road, I raced to the side where the houses were, and I sped walked down that path as fast as I could without making noise, only glancing back when I was nearing the end of the road. The men were still there next to the bridge. I could see that they were looking through the bridge to see where I had gone to. I felt sick and terrified, but I made it home. I don't know what they wanted. I don't know who they were, if they'll be there again tonight. But I do know that I'm not going to be walking at night for a very long time. Strangers under the bridge. Let's not meet. This could maybe be nothing, but it seemed really weird. So, I was walking around my neighborhood because I'm living with my parents, and I wanted to smoke a little before going to bed. And I didn't want to smoke inside and stink up the place. I figured there would be nobody walking around since we were on lockdown and it's nearly midnight. And even if there was someone walking around, it's unlikely that they would care that I was smoking. About 5 minutes after I left my house, I see a black pickup truck drive past me. I don't really take too much notice of it because you still occasionally see people driving around. I get to the end of the street where he drove past me, and I see him again driving back up the street. I just assumed that he forgot something before setting off and was driving back to grab it. I walk for another 5 to 10 minutes and I see him drive past me again. I start to get a bit paranoid at this point because for him to drive past me this third time would mean that he was driving in a complete opposite direction he was originally driving, and because I'm smoking and listening to a true crime podcast. I realized that walking around alone at night while smoking and listening to podcasts about serial killers is a recipe for paranoia. Yeah, I'm stupid, but I'm usually completely fine. I know my area well and it's easy to spot anything out of the ordinary. So I carry on walking, but I go in a different direction to what someone might expect had they seen me walking at night, just in case he was following me. And I'm not really listening to the podcast anymore, just looking out for this black pickup truck. But lo and behold, guess who I see driving past me again? At this point, I'm absolutely crapping myself because for him to have driven past me again, he would have had driven in a very specific way. So I can only assume he's following me. I then proceed to stop walking and just face the truck as it's driving towards me and stare him out. This is probably a very stupid idea, as I have no fighting experience and it's not like I'm super strong or anything. But I wanted to make it seem like I wasn't scared of him, and I was ready to defend myself if he decided to pull over and attack me. Despite the fact that I was terrified of him, and I would probably lose a fight. But the weird thing is that he didn't even glance at me. He just looked straight ahead and kept driving. I find this weird for two reasons. One, because there is no possible way that he didn't notice this was his fourth time driving past me. The road and the path that I've been walking on were very close proximity and there was no one else out. And two, because I literally stopped in my tracks to stare him out. He would have noticed this, as it's not very often that people stop in their tracks just to stare you out driving. He drives off again, and at this point, I'm freaked out. So I run to a thicket that someone who doesn't know the area well would know about, so that he couldn't see me from the road. I call my friend who lives nearby and basically say, "This is gonna sound strange, but there's a black pickup truck just driving around our neighborhood over and over again." My friend is like, "Okay, let me go check." We're on the phone and he's outside looking down the street for his truck. I ask, "Do you see him?" And he says, "Nah, I can't. Wait a minute." And he goes silent for a few seconds. Holy crap, that's him. Crap, I'm going inside. What the heck? So, I'm hiding, still on the phone to my friend after he goes inside. Luckily, my friend has cameras outside of his house, so he's watching his monitors as we're chatting. This truck drives past his house another 2 times in the span of about 5 to 7 minutes. We both agree that this is really weird, and I called the police, a non-emergency number, to report it, and they tell me that they'll send a unit down to check it out. I then call my dad to pick me up, and he comes straight away to get me because he doesn't care about me smoking and he's an absolute hero. I get back home and I ring my friend to ask him for updates. This black truck drove past his house 15 times in the time it took me to get back home, which took maybe 20 minutes. After the 15th time, he saw a police van driving down the street, and we didn't see the black truck again, so maybe the police found him. But they haven't updated me, so I don't know. I tried to logically figure out an explanation for it afterwards. I thought maybe he was a pizza delivery man, but that didn't make sense because he wasn't slowing down to look at the numbers of the houses. And surely after the 20th time of driving around this very small area, you would just bring the person that you're delivering to. Or maybe even pull over and ask me, since I clearly know the area if I'm walking around it at night. And then I thought maybe he was looking for his dog or something. But that really didn't make sense either, because the area that he was driving around was so small. If your dog was lost, he would cover a much larger area than just this one little area 20 times. So, any ideas on what he was doing? This was back in 2015 when I was 16. It was during the summer and both my parents were heading out of town to visit some relatives, and they wouldn't be home for 3 days. I was the only child and I was the only one left in the house. My grandma did visit me every single day to make me lunch, but of course she wouldn't stay during the night, and that's when I went wild. Watching movies, gaming, watching YouTube. Everything that you could picture a 16-year-old doing when his parents weren't home. So, the second night I was watching a movie, and I ran out of chips and I paused the movie and went down in the kitchen to grab some more. And then I heard a window break and a door opening. The kitchen was separate to the living room, where the door was opened. I grabbed a kitchen knife and slowly peeked my head around. And there he was. A tall man around 6 foot. He had a baseball cap, some old jacket, probably leather. It was torn on the right sleeve. And my phone was in the room upstairs. From the kitchen door, the stairs were directly to its right, so in my mind, I was thinking that I could sneak past him and lock myself in. He was going through the shelf next to the door, very loudly I must say, and so I got to the stairs somehow, and he turned around and realized that I was there. Out of fear, I guess, I screamed and I threw the knife at him. I missed him, but it hit the wall beside his head, sticking the knife in it. This somehow scared him off because he ran out, maybe scared that I would throw more knives at him. I did run back to get another. My adrenaline was pumping at the time. When I saw that he did leave, I ran to my room and I called the police. They came quickly and just took fingerprints and any DNA samples that they could find. The next morning, I called my parents and they came back around noon. I don't know why, but I had kept the knife lodged in the wall next to the door. So, making sense, the first question they asked when they got home was, why was there a knife in the wall? We eventually changed the front door with a more heavy-duty one. They found the guy too and they arrested him the same week. Apparently the intruder wanted to call the cops on me for supposed assault. I guess the moral of the story is hide when someone is robbing your house, or learn how to act like a maniac. This happened a few weeks ago and I'm still rather shaken up. I'm a 19-year-old, low-level retail associate at a nationwide chain store. I've worked here a little over a year and so far, I can honestly say that I enjoy my job. On a normal day, there will be 3 or 4 of us plus one manager, sometimes both, and we'll split up the tasks. Work the registers, tidy up the store, help customers with stuff, unload freight, stock the shelves, your typical retail stuff. It can be backbreaking work and people can be downright horrible. But at this point, I basically just developed an apathy for it. Since the quarantine though, it's down to one manager and 1 or 2 workers. Anyway, it was a pretty quiet morning. It was pouring outside and we had just opened so people weren't really coming in droves. I was at the front of the store and feeling rather drowsy from the rain, kind of mindlessly dusting off a shelf of clearance soaps, when an older man came in. He was maybe in his late 60s or 70s, wearing kind of shabby clothing, and had headphones connected to an outdated MP3 player. I was kneeling so he didn't see me and instead went over to my coworker to pester her about why we didn't have a mirror in the front of the store for people buying accessories. We sell a few scarves, hats, sweaters, and maybe the odd purse, but we aren't a clothing store. So I mentally wrote him off as a mere nuisance and I went back to work. My manager came out to do something and he greeted her by name, which isn't too unusual, as we have a lot of regulars. As he started telling her about some new job he got while she engaged him in small talk at the other end of the store, a mom and her kids walked in the door and asked me about lampshades. Well, I thought, he's the manager's problem now, and I didn't think anything more about it. More time passed, the lampshade family left, and eventually, I was left by myself at the front. The rain was still coming down pretty heavily, so I left my post briefly to get one of those caution wet floor signs. But other than that, I found myself standing at the registers with not much to do. It had been an hour or so. I honestly thought that the man had left, but he came shuffling up to the register with a hat, some headphones, and a little spice bottle of rib seasoning that cost less than $1. That detail is important, I swear. As I was ringing him up, he made conversation with me. He asked how old I was, which I thought was a little weird, but I didn't think too much of it. The whole time he seemed off. I couldn't explain why at the time, but something just made my skin crawl. I was glad to see him leave. To my surprise, though, he was back within half an hour. I was still alone at the front, and he came straight to me to return the seasoning that he had bought. Since it was like 75 cents, I asked if anything was wrong with it. He said no, he had just found a better deal. On top of the earlier feeling that I'd had, I thought that was kind of bizarre. Why go looking for a better deal? Why return it if it costs so little? Even if I was a little weirded out, I got started on the return. He again asked my age and started complimenting the way that I looked, saying how pretty I was. I don't think any teenager likes having a creepy older man ogle them, and I was definitely uncomfortable. He repeatedly made sure that I was over 18. I finished that transaction in a hurry and watched him leave. 10 minutes later, he walked through the door again. I was starting to get a little nervous, so I started looking around for my coworker, but she had taken a break. He purchased a jacket for a small dog this time, but was very weird, saying his sister had just had a baby or something. I was wondering if he knew that it was clothing for a dog. I took a deep breath and started totaling up the purchase as quickly as I could. Once again, he asked if I was over 18, and kept calling me his new boo. I could see him practically undressing me with his eyes, and felt completely grossed out. I stopped engaging in conversation, and plastered a smile on my face as I handed him his receipt. This time, I made sure I saw him walk out the door and into the parking lot. 10 minutes passed and he didn't come back. 15 minutes, 20. I'm starting to feel relieved. And then he's back again. I'm starting to panic. Where's my manager? Where is my coworker? He buys another dog jacket and strikes up conversation again. At this point, I'm just giving him one-word answers, trying not to be rude and trying not to puke. He's still calling me his boo. He asked my age again. He asked where I live, when I work, and where did I go to college. What days do I attend class? It's getting really invasive and creepy. Since we're often unloading boxes and stuff, I wear a lanyard with my ID, a box cutter, and my house key around my neck. The ID is a habit from school, since you need your ID to get into anywhere on campus. He notices this, and I can see him trying to read my full name and address. I try to move away and he grabs it, still around my neck, and he pulls me closer to him, almost over the counter. I go into panic mode and I look around for something sharp. I grab the scissors from the cup next to me and say, "Don't touch me," as loud as I can. He lets go and reads my full name out loud, commenting on how pretty it is. Hearing my shout, my coworker comes to the front to see what's going on, and the man finally leaves. Once he was gone, I hurriedly made up an excuse to go to the bathroom, and I called my mom panicking. I was afraid that he would come back again, but the rest of my shift passed without too many more incidents. When I walked out to my car after my shift, I saw him in a beat-up truck loitering around the lot. I took a roundabout way home and got out of there as fast as I could, but I couldn't stop thinking about how he had seen my full name and home address on my ID. Can't believe I was dumb enough to wear that thing where people could see it. I've always enjoyed work because of my coworkers and managers. But since then, I've been a nervous wreck going in. The first week, I was able to find excuses to avoid the registers, but I sprained my ankle, and it seemed logical for the one-legged girl to stay up in front and not hobble around, moving heavy stuff and whatnot. I finally broke and told my managers what had happened, and they've been really great about finding out who the guy is from the tapes, and making sure that I haven't been left alone since, just in case he comes back. I feel like I've seen his car driving around my neighborhood a few times since then, but part of me also believes it could just be my paranoia. I know that as a woman in America working in customer service, stuff like this is going to happen to me, and there's nothing that I can do about it. Especially since I have to smile and act nice because I can't be rude to customers. But still, I've been pretty freaked out these past few weeks. Old guy who thinks that I'm his boo. Let's not meet again.